Hi. Yes, I think we're recording now. So, welcome everyone. This is a special edition of Conversations That Matter. And since we can't do it live this Wednesday, so I thought this may be a really good opportunity to invite one of my favorite guests, Denise. And Denise Jarvie is author, and maybe you would tell us all the decks that are coming on, but she have quite a few oracle decks, books, meditation series. She's a Reiki master, oracle teacher, what else? Spiritual teacher, many things in one. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity today to bring her in as my guest to talk to you all. And, because I can't do live this week, so I thought we would record something special for you. So today's topic is really about inner critics, about forgiveness or unforgiveness. And the way I like to do this is it's having like a conversation that me and Dennis sometimes have when we talk about topics like that. And obviously, if general viewers have comments and questions, you can just comment below or PM us. That would be fine too, because I think it's going to help people to bring more awareness of subjects like that. And hopefully that can help people in their life, because we're both coaches in a way. Like, I don't think, Denise, you call yourself a coach, but I found your work, it's a lot of times it's in a similar fashion, which is helping people. So so today, welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much, Sue. It is it's so exciting to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me as well. I always love to share information that helps to empower people. And the inner critic is not something that is really a normal discussion piece with people. It's not something that normally talk about in everyday life. So it's something that is really important. And I think it's really important that you're bringing it up too. So
yeah. Like the way I see the word inner critic, it's that often I catch myself with say, I should have done this better. Or sometimes it's often actually our ego is saying, tell us to do the wrong thing, that act on an impulse, which I talked about impulse and intuition last week. And we have this impulse to do something sometimes could be foolish, or maybe something we just feel we have to say this or make that decision. And maybe just not the right time or the right way to say it. But we had an impulse. We didn't have the impulse control. Maybe we didn't have the meditation in the morning, or sometimes we're just human. And when we do that, and our ego sort of took charge, and we say something, we did something silly, or we're regretful. And then, so our ego told us to do the wrong thing, but then punish us by saying that I told you so, and you should have done it better. You should have been better. And I think that happens to me quite a bit in the past. I don't think I'm a perfectionist, but often, I do. I mean, I maybe coming from a culture where I don't think that it's all about achieving things, but it's always very competitive environment. I grew up in Hong Kong, and whether it's a school about career, it's always that you really try to aim higher and then do as much as you can in the shortest amount of time. And sometimes when we didn't get what we wanted, then we beat ourselves up. And then I think the inner critic really kicks in for me. So that was my early professional or, personal experience about inner critic. But today I really want to let people hear what Denise will think about inner critic, because, sometimes it's something that we talked about, but I think I really enjoy our conversations. So, so what does it mean to you, inner critic, Denise?
So the inner critic, well, we all have those different voices and different personalities that go on in our mind. We have so much inner talk that goes on, and a lot of the time we don't really take much notice of it. It's just something that's there, reiterating our mood or the state that we're in. So if we're feeling a bit off, we might have this talk going on inside of us. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling very well today. Oh, it's not fair. Or I wish this had, gone my way. And a lot of the time we don't even realise that inner talk is going on. It's just reiterating the mood or the state that we are feeling at that moment. So there are lots of voices that go on. Now, the inner critic is just one of them. And for me, And like yourself, I don't think I'm that much of a perfectionist. Yes, I like things to be a certain way, and I'm always striving to better myself, to know more, to understand things more, and to help others to become more of themselves as well, to expand their consciousness. But I had a huge inner critic, huge voice that took over a lot, went from a very young age. And this isn't about parent bashing or blaming the people around me, but you know, I grew up in an atmosphere of just get on with it, and just push your feelings down and get on with it, and you should have known better, and if you've made a decision, that's it, that's your choice, you've made your bed, you've got to lie in it. So I grew up in all of that, all of those attitudes. So talking about my feelings was not something that was really encouraged at all, or even really thought about either. And so all of those ideas that flowed from the well-meaning adults around me became that voice in my head that I should have known better, that I should know better. And I was listening to them, and those voices, the information that came from those people became a belief, fed the inner critic within me, shaped that, if you want to call it that. And the ego, from my point of view, the ego is our observer of life. And what does that mean? It means that the ego is looking at life, it's looking around, and it's taking in the information of life and coming to certain conclusions. And those conclusions become our thoughts and ideas, which eventually become beliefs. So if we're told something often enough, so if we're in our culture or, you know, around our family or friends, if we're told something often enough or we experience often enough, it becomes a part of who we are. And so the inner critic is, in some ways, it's quite wonderful, because it stops us from just willy-nilly going out and doing things and putting ourselves into danger. You know, there's that little voice that says, oh, hang on, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Why are you doing this? Sort of thing. But if we listen to it too much, it just takes over our decision-making, and we don't actually make decisions from our heart, from our soul, or from our inner being, our authentic self. We end up making decisions based on our mind and what we have learnt, which is what the inner critic is. Now, for me, and you know, I was a really anxious kid. I was always in the future. I was in fear all the time. And so the inner critic was always there. You know, who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? Blah, 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 blah. And it stopped me from doing a lot of things in my life. It held me in a space of fear. It then caused me to become that anxious kid. I became full of anxieties, and then that flowed into depression from my teenage years on. And it all happened because I listened to the inner critic, which was a conglomeration of the thoughts and beliefs and ideas of the people around me. It wasn't even me. And all of that happened because I listened to that more than I listened to my inner self. And so as I came into this work and I started to look within myself more, I began to realize that the inner critic was actually, it was that red flag that went up that said to me, you're not listening to yourself. You're listening to somebody else's truth. And yes, some of that might resonate with you, but the inner critic it's like the gap between. It's that feeling, that not feeling very good. You feel awful when the inner critic starts, and that is telling you that you're not aligned with yourself and you're not connected to your authentic self, and you're listening to everyone else. And so you then start living a life to please others. Well, that's not what everybody experiences, but that was what happened to me. That was long and convoluted. I'm sorry about that.
No, a couple of things that what you said, I mean, that have been something that I've been thinking about. as well. You know, the notion that, you know, we should have known better before we did this thing, blew that opportunity. It's basically, in another words, saying that you are not good enough. If you're good enough, smart enough, you know, wise enough, then you wouldn't have made that foolish decision. But then sometimes, you know, two things. One is that we learn from our mistakes. People make mistakes. And it's also not about counting failure, because all of them are learning opportunities. And we do make mistakes. Sometimes we do blue things. I mean, whether it's relationship or professional stuff, but sometimes we just didn't make the right choice. It happens. And we definitely can learn from it. And also sometimes I think through pain and mistakes, that's where you learn. If you're all day happy, doing well, you don't, you know, you don't travel much. It's not how life is supposed to be. So I do see that, you know, that there is a point of when the inner critic would say that you should have known better, then I would say, well, so it's not so much about buying into the belief that I'm not good enough. It's more that I make a mistake, and what do I learn from this? So that becomes the healthy way that I would say. But sometimes we get so dwell on to the unhealthy dwelling, which is, you know, it's never going to work for me. The victim mode kicks in. So I do find it that could be, I mean, the inner critic, maybe sometimes just words, you know, people may use different things, or ego, or, you know, whether it's inner truth or the white wolf, whatever people use. But I think sometimes it's important to, you know, go back to what you said, trust your heart. With you, when you're still enough, then you can hear whether it is really what your heart is saying, what you are learning from this lesson, or you're just trying to please somebody else. That is a lesson in itself. And I think what's really, I think what catches us here is that, so how do we know sometimes it is our ego speaking, or that sort of negative self-belief talking, versus you know, oh, I'm a bit out of alignment, so my inner critic say, hold on a minute, this may not be the right thing for you. I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we sound like broken record, isn't it? That we always say meditation, meditation, meditation. So you will know it better, put it, you know, put out there in the universe. The science will come. You will see the truth when you're still enough. So it's kind of like we keep on saying it. But what do you think? Like, you know, sometimes it helps, sometimes it just kind of make us worse. So how do you discern, and what would be your way of, how do you deal with it?
Well, you know, and that's a really, really interesting question, because, you know, living it as we have and doing the work we do, sometimes I forget how much pain I went through. And so it's a really good question, because it brings me back to just help people what can we do about it? How do you discern it? So what is the difference between the inner critic, or the voice within us that is just saying, you know, maybe this would not be the best path for you to take? You know, you'll always know by the way you feel. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, because it's what I tell everyone else. And the problem is, we're so focused on the outside world that we've forgotten how to be in touch with ourselves and how we feel. And so the easiest way for somebody who is just sort of looking at this and not really thinking, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to go within? What does it mean to feel or believe in yourself? Because so many people don't. It's just everything is focused on the So it's that feeling of it's the best way I can say that. It's like, oh, I don't know, you know, that feeling inside of you of like a little bell going off in the back of your mind, or, you know, just maybe feeling anxious in your solar plexus, in your tummy. And it really is learning to get in touch with you. And it doesn't mean that if those feelings come and you don't do anything about it, that you've done anything wrong. All it means is that the decision you're about to make may be a path that is full of resistance, may be a path that may be bringing something that's a bit difficult to you. But those difficulties will really help you to get clear with what you do want. The thing is, I suppose for me, what I really want to help people to understand is that, as you said earlier, life is life. We're here to experience life, good, bad, indifferent. It's always going to be there. There's always going to be things that we agree with and things we don't agree with. It just depends on how we're going to go about it. Are we going to go about it through a space of fear or love? And when I talk about love, I don't mean gooey love that makes us all want to throw up. I'm talking about just that feeling of, yes, this is easy, this is satisfying, this is fulfilling, this feels like the right way for me to do things. It's an aligned feeling. There's no resistance in it. That's what I mean when I say love. When we talk about the path of fear, often that's, oh my God, I need more money, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. It's like we go into the future and decide that we need a certain outcome to feel okay. And so meditation helps you to feel balanced now. So you're not going to make decisions from that out of balance place, which is going to take you on a path that is going to be full of resistance and difficulties. So, but again, there's nothing wrong with those paths. It's just that we take them personally, like we take the inner critic personally, and we let it beat ourselves up. We let life beat us up. We let other people beat us up. And what I mean by that is by the attention we give to it, because we've forgotten that those uncomfortable feelings are telling us that we're not listening to us. We're living somebody else's experience of life or somebody else's idea of who we should be. You know, when we're growing up, you know, we've got lots of well-meaning adults around us who say, don't worry about anything, I'll do it. And if you need anything, come to me. And if you want anything, if you need to know anything, come to me. Don't worry about it, just lean on me. And the biggest problem with that, as much as, you know, we all want to do that, we want to take people's pain away from them and we don't want them to feel uncomfortable. The biggest problem with that is they never learn to lean on themselves. They never learn to find that authentic them. And so the inner critic reigns supreme in a situation like that. It's like it takes up residence in your mind. It's like it sits in your best chair in your mind, and it says, I'm here and I'm just going to tell you what to do, because we haven't taken the time to get to know ourselves. And I know I've just gone a bit off topic there, but you know what I'm like, Sue Wing, I do tend to waffle a bit.
No, like, you know, you mentioned something I found it really important to talk about, you know, the resistance. You know, we hear that a lot about resistance, whether it's about manifestation or resisting our own desire, all that stuff. But I found it really interesting to think about, you know, sometimes we resist to forgive, whether it's to resist to forgive ourselves of others. You know, in our spiritual community, forgiveness is like such a code word, right? Like as if, you know, everything it's about forgiveness. And I do believe it is true, but it has to be real. Because sometimes I feel that, you know, just, okay, now I'm doing meditation, now I'm becoming spiritual now, so I have to forgive you because you did this wrong to me X years ago, but I'm so spiritual now, so I will forgive you. That isn't really forgiveness. That's actually still holding a lot of resistance.
Well, you know, that's all coming from the mind. It's not coming from that. It's coming from the idea that that's what I have to do.
Exactly.
Forgiveness. And that's that fear thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that forgiveness to me isn't real forgiveness. It's just, you know, it's another kind of resistance to actually really move on. To me, forgiveness is really about seeing the innocence in everyone, including yourself. So, okay, you make a mistake, so you ask for forgiveness, whether it's you talking to yourself or talking to someone else. It's about to see the situation differently, that yes, we agree that we admit that we make a mistake, but we are here to atone, to apologize, to make right. And for me, that's forgiveness, whether to yourself or to others. So, and that's nothing about being spiritual about it. It's really about, that's the only way to set you free, to release this resistance of whatever that's in your way, you know. And so when you talk about resistance, it really rang the bell for me. And so about forgiveness, what do you say to your client or people about the subject of forgiveness? Because a lot of people come to us,
forgiveness,
they don't say that is what they want to do, but then let's say I have a business coaching client, the first thing they say something, I'll ask you, so who you haven't forgive? Like, it's funny, like it's something unrelated. People don't come to us and say, I didn't forgive certain people, so I'm stuck in here. They would say, I've done so much, but I'm still stuck in here.
Yes. Yeah, well, because again, we don't, if that person is not in our life anymore, it's like we don't think they should be bothering us anymore. You know, however, if you think about someone or a situation or an event or something that has happened and it feels like it happened yesterday, and you often hear people say that, oh, it felt like it just happened yesterday, it means that nothing has shifted. All their energy, all the pain that they felt in that moment, every time they think about it, exactly the same thing is activated. So that person or that event it's like it's just been in front of them in that moment. You know, it may as well not have had any time in between. So that's why that occurs. We trigger it. It's like something triggers us, and then, you know, we're back in that same space. Now, for me, we find it difficult to let go of things or forgive because there's an unbalance or an imbalance in our thinking about that subject or that person. So, you know, when people say, oh, you know I need to let go of a past love, if they've had a boyfriend or a girlfriend and they still find themselves being really clinging, can't let it go. You know, they say, I know, mentally up here, it's like, I know I need to let go of it for me to feel better, but I can't. And the reason that they can't is because there's an imbalance in their perception of them. What does that mean? It means that they felt that they put so much into it, so much energy into this situation. They did so much for this person or this place, and they haven't got back yet. It's like I
haven't got the money back.
Yeah, they gave all their energy away, and it's like now they're still feeling depleted and waiting for it to come back. So yes, as you said, they haven't been paid yet, and that's the main reason why we find it difficult to let go and even to forgive. Like, if that person took something from me, if I felt they hurt me or took something from me, I'm going to wait until they go through the same thing before I feel better, because that's the only way I'm going to feel like I've been paid. The biggest problem with that, of course, we're not in control of anyone else's lives. We're only in control of our own and how we perceive ourselves and how we go about in our world. And so every time you think about them, it's like you're still giving your energy to that person. You're still empowering them and disempowering yourself.
So what would you say that you would say, well, I think, like, if someone asks you or you ask yourself whether you have completely forgiven a person or a situation, how would you know that you have truly?
Well, if they're still talking about it, it's still active in them. And what I mean by that, let me just reiterate that, because there's nothing wrong with talking about something from the past. And if someone says, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I went through this, 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 and this, but it took me on a path and now I feel like I'm a better person for it. That's wisdom. That's triggering the past, a memory that becomes wisdom. But if you trigger a memory from the past and it's like, oh, that person, they made me feel terrible, that situation is awful, and now I'm going through this because of this 20 years later, I'm still going through this situation, I'm still bringing the same people into my life, I'm still going through stuff, that will tell you that the forgiveness hasn't happened. Or, as I like to say, just bringing it back into balance, because forgiveness is a funny word. It's got a lot of stuff connected to it that isn't really true. It is this, I need to forgive that person. It's like, it's an action that needs to take place. I need to let go. And it's like, it's not an action. It's more of an alignment, aligning yourself. So it's coming to peace with where you are to start with and not blaming yourself. And hopefully not blaming the other person, but sometimes that takes a little while. And just finding the positives and negatives in the situation, and keep writing the positives and the negatives until you've got the equal amounts on each side. If you've got more positives, we tend to put someone on a pedestal. If we've got more negatives, we tend to put them in a pit. But what we want to do is just really see them through our heart, or see them through that innocence, is what you were saying before.
I actually have a really personal experience many years ago that, you know, a relationship went really badly. Like, as in, overnight, it's just, you know, it got to completely end. It has to. And, you know, when, you know, a deal breaker, when you realize something so fundamentally challenge your value and it's just unacceptable, then you just have to stop, like a hard stop, right? And, you know, I went through exactly what you said, because now when I look back, I mean, I do self-inventory, so I know it for quite some time now. Like, if that event didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. And then so many, you know, cause and effect happened because I think A happened, so I go to stop B, and therefore I met person C or whatever. So if it wasn't because of that event, a lot of good things wouldn't come into my way. It's about what you do at that moment, how you respond. And when I look back, I certainly think I've forgiven the situation, because I don't hold those energy when I revisit what happened, and I see the blessing in it. And I'm not saying that what that person did was right, okay. Certainly not. We're not saying that. Both Denise and I are pretty clear on those things. But it's about how we live our life, how do we respond to it instead of react to it. And also, what do we see that could come out from it? And as you said, the energy, the balance. And I think maybe at the end of the day, there's nothing to forgive. It's about life lessons. Like, so they have their own lessons. We're trying to see the innocence, and sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. And regardless, that's their story, that's their life lessons, and we have our own. And, you know, and I felt that definitely for myself that, you know, in order to move on, is really you have to treasure sometimes those hard-earned lessons, really.
Oh, you know, it's like for me in relationships, I mean, some of the most amazing experiences in my life have been through romantic relationships, but also some of the worst experiences in my life have also come from romantic relationships. And it's finding, as you said, that balance, that forgiveness, and realizing that everything happens to help you see where you don't love something about yourself, where you haven't found that innocence in a story or in a part of you yet. You know, because if you were aligned with it, it's not going to trigger you. It's not going to make you feel awful, where you then feel like you have to compromise yourself to get a result. Because if you compromise yourself, you're straight out of balance. You've given something to someone else, and now you're waiting for them to give you something back in return so that you can come back into balance. And we do it all the time. We do it on a daily basis. You hear people say, oh, I don't want to go to work today. Oh, do I have to go and see my family? Do I have to do this? Do I have to? Oh, no, I have to do that because I'm responsible, and, you know, that's what's expected. And there's nothing wrong with going and doing those things, even if you don't want to do them. But you've got to get aligned with yourself first. You've got to come to balance with yourself first and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it from an aligned place. Otherwise, you're going to blame them for you feeling bad.
And, you know, we hear people say that a lot, say someone, you know, do something awful, like steal money or cheated or whatever, and they will, in a moment of anger, they will say, oh, I wish something like this would happen to them, and so, you know, they will learn the lessons and karma, whatever. They throw in some spiritual as if works in it, and make it as if it's, you know.
It's a bit judgmental, though. It's not really.
But you know, the funny thing is that I bet my bottom dollar, even if the same horrible things happen to that person, so the thief, you know, got robbed himself, let's just say, it doesn't help you. It doesn't make you feel any better. In that spur of moment, oh yeah, you know, you see,
and in that,
but it doesn't actually heal.
No, and in the space for the other person, it will just compound the belief that they already have. That, yeah, see, I've got to go out and steal from other people because people steal from me, and so it's not actually going to help anyone.
So the wounded people wound people syndrome.
So, you know, and if people are ready to hear it, I might often say, you know, if someone feels like they need to steal a lot of money, I'd say, well, let's give them $1 million and let's take that fear away, and see what happens then, you know. But of course, that's not really, it's not something that I suppose we could do. But it's just hypothetically, I'm just trying to help people see things from a different point of view. Because, forgiveness is, and someone said to me a long time ago, just say to yourself, to that person or that event or whatever has occurred, thank you for giving me the opportunity to know more about myself. And so it's taking forgiving and saying for giving. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to know myself and love myself more so that I can fulfill my potential in life. And really that's what being here is about. That's what living life is about. That's what co-creating with others is about, and having interactions with people. Yeah, we're not always going to like what people say and what people and I really came up against it in this industry, if you want to call it an industry, that I have had some very different ideas over the years, and because they have not been the norm of what everybody else thought, I've been, told I'm wrong and told all sorts of things, that I'm the devil and all sorts of things. But, for me, it's like, well, it's remembering what Buddha said when he said that, and he said it much more elegantly than I'm about to, that listen to yourself. Even if I am saying this to you, don't believe it just because I'm saying it. Check in with yourself first and see if it resonates with you. And if something doesn't resonate, you just leave it on the path and you just move forward. We don't blame somebody. We don't tell them they need to do it differently. And, the best thing, if anything has gone on in your life or you're observing something that you really don't like, the best thing that you can do for yourself and for everyone else is to say, okay, this is not something that I want in my life. It's not something that I want to look at or have in my life. But what it's doing is helping me to create a path that I can walk down that will become obsolete. Because the more you keep looking at something, like the more we keep thinking, I should forgive, I should forgive, I should forgive, the bigger it's going to get and the worse you're going to feel. So forgiveness is, if we can go about everything from a balanced point of view, there's nothing ever to forgive. It's when we go about life from an unbalanced point of view. My beliefs are right, yours are wrong. You have to abide by my rules for me to feel good in this world. Automatically, you're going to set up all these imbalances in yourself, and you're going to bring to you all of these situations that are going to push your buttons.
So one thing I know that you spoke about before, and I'd love to hear more about. I heard you say the term, not for the viewers now, but we had a chat before, and you mentioned something called separation sickness. Tell me more about it.
Well, separation sickness is something that, for me, it's a term that I've come to because it's something that I felt for a very long time, and I was separate from myself. I separated from me, from that inner voice, from my authenticity, from who I was. Now, I didn't do it with all subjects in my life because, and if this is something for us all to think about, there are things in your life that you're just going to do. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says or does around you, you're going to do it that way. I did it, I suppose, as I grew up, my friends were very important to me. And it didn't matter what my parents said about my friends. And that turned into my partners later on either. It didn't matter what they thought about them. Didn't matter what they said. Nothing they did or said was going to stop me from seeing my friends or being with a partner. And it was just something that I was always really strong about it in me. But there were other things like trying to please my mother, trying to make my mother feel better because she has depression and she's gone through a difficult time in her life. And I thought it was my responsibility to make her happy. And so that I was wobbly. wobbly on. And I can still be a bit wobbly. I want to go out there and take everyone's pain away. But, you know, that doesn't always help. Actually, it doesn't help at all. Because what we can do is support people to find their own pain and find their own forgiveness. So separation sickness is something that tends to happen to us. And I touched on it earlier when I said that all the well-meaning people around us say, don't listen to yourself, listen to me. I'll help you out. And so what tends to happen is we start to move away from listening to the inner voice, and we start to look around for the answers in our life. We start to look to other people for answers, and we start to just observe the outside world, and we use the outside world as a way to validate who we are, instead of coming in here and validating who we are in here, then going out into the world. Nothing wrong with being out in the world and experiencing things and looking at things, but if it makes you feel bad, you've got to just sit up and say, okay, why is this pushing a button in me? And right there in that moment, I would always say, just look away from it, or turn off the telly, or do whatever you can. You know, if I'm at a function, or if I'm with my family and I don't like the conversation, you know, I'll just say, I'm just going to the toilet. I'll be back in a minute. and I used to say I was going to go out and have a cigarette, but I haven't smoked for about 10 years, so I can't do that anymore. And all that does is it breaks that moment, because I know if I keep going in that conversation, I'm going to end up in a space where I want to argue. I'm arguing with that person because it's more important to be right than feel good, because that's where we go. And so I know, if I'm starting to feel bad, if I'm separating from me, and I need to do whatever I can to come back into balance with me, then I go back out. And it's like, just as I said earlier, that part of me that just knows that it didn't matter what anyone said, I would always be true to my friends, and they would always be there. It's being that in every part of your life.
Being a friend to yourself.
Yes, it's a wonderful way to look at it. And it is making sure that you enter every situation in that way. Because what are you taking into a room? What are you taking into a relationship? What are you taking into every moment of your life? If you've got thoughts there, if you've got the inner critic banging around in there telling you you're not good enough, that's what you're taking in to the conversation you're about to have. That's what you're taking into a room. Does that make sense? And so the separation is just a realization that the way we create life comes from here, comes from everywhere, comes from us. It's the energy that we put out into the world. But of course, what we've been taught is that the world is just something that's there, and we've just got to find our way to the best way possible. It's a little bit like the world. We're letting the world affect us instead of us affecting the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're here to co-create. Is, you know, be in this world but not of it. And you know, two things I want to say. First of all, I love that I need to go to bathroom tactics, because sometimes you just get so swelled up in a conversation, and it's not the right place. Sometimes it is. You know, sometimes it's an open space, sometimes it's a discussion, but sometimes it's just not the place for us to spill out everything. I mean, it's not that you have to lie or pretend, but sometimes it's just not the right place to give your whole argument or your lecture, you know. Yeah. Sometimes we like, I don't know, people that tend to give lectures and love to lecture, right? So we need to be very mindful not to do that. The toilet is really good, because once you get yourself off the environment, just even for that minute,
you just take a breath.
It takes away the energy, like you're not in this spiral up. So it really can help us to just calm down. You can just sit on it for a minute, and then you may not be so boiling. So I really like that toilet tactics. And like you go and get a drink somewhere, like yes, going to get a cup of tea, and you just move yourself away. And that's really helpful. And another thing,
sorry, I was going to say something I wanted to add there is that I'm not, I just want to remind people too that I'm not saying ignore that situation or You know, if it's making you feel bad, turn it off.
But you need to gather yourself before.
Yeah, ignore it in that moment. When you're feeling more aligned with yourself, certainly then go and look at it again, and then you're going to see the whole picture, and you're going to have inspired action to take. There's going to be wisdom that comes from it, instead of that I wish it would be different, or a situation where the inner critic can come up.
Or you say something you regret because you're just so fired up at that point. I mean, you know, we say you want to be right or want to be kind. And sometimes it's really hard to be kind in that moment. You just need to stay away for just 30 seconds just to cool down. Another thing I want to say about the separation sickness is that, in the Course of Miracles, to talk about, there's only one problem we have, is the illusion of everyone being separate. And in fact, we're all one consciousness. I mean, there's no many school of thought, whether you talk about psychology like Jungian psychology, or you talk about myths, you talk about spirituality, you talk about near-death experience. Everybody from different school will tell you the basic principle. The biggest concept is that all minds are joined. So the only sickness we have is that separation. I mean, we're individuated, so we learn our individual lessons and do our own purpose in this lifetime. But essentially, we're all connected. All minds are joined. So if you're pissed off with someone knows. And so, by being able to see it, then you know what the problem is. Then you're very close to your solution.
And that's such a big concept. You know, it's a bit like saying to someone, you know, how big is infinity? And I don't know.
If you have to measure it, if you can measure it, it's
because we're in the physical body, we're trying to measure things. Because that's what we are. We're here. Yes, we've separated from our stream of consciousness, if you want to call it that, or our soul. A little part of us is separated from that to experience this physical life in order for our soul to expand. And our soul, if you want to call it that, or stream of consciousness, flows all the way back to the beginning of all things, where we're all connected. So we're all individual streams of consciousness experiencing life for the expansion of all. Right? Now that's a bit of a woo-woo concept.
No, like I totally you so many different schools say the same thing.
Yeah. But what it is saying is that, yes, we are all one. Oneness is something that I tend to not say a lot, because it's bantered around a bit and people go, oh, yeah, we're all one.
I totally love what you said, because I think in the physical sense, in the physical dimension, physical reality, of course, you and I are separate. I'm here, you and the other suburb, we're sitting in this space, you're over there. That's separate, but in a spiritual level, the mind's level, the consciousness
on the soul's level, we are all one. It's like we're all connected through our hearts, but that's not always going to help us in the everyday life, because we have separated from ourselves, and meaning we've separated from that soul aspect. We've forgotten to listen to ourselves, and we've put many layers of beliefs and culture and society and ideas that become the filters of our life, and that's how we feel we live through our life. And so what any type of going inside of yourself is learning to remove those filters, or just look beyond them. And that's the illusion of life. There's nothing wrong with having these beliefs and ideas, because that's how we're going to perceive life. But know that that is not the truth, or the authentic self. That is just the way we're choosing to look at life in that moment. So the illusion is the beliefs and the ideas that we keep thinking, which become part of our personality, which become our ego, and the ego is the observer of life. So it's, you know, I can remember when someone first told me that, you know, this world is an illusion. A teacher said, you know, it's an illusion. And I thought, and what I took that to mean is that my life isn't important. Now, though I know that's not what they were saying, but that's just the way I perceived it. So I often say to people, yes, this world, the way you perceive things is an illusion, but that doesn't mean that your life isn't important, and what you experience isn't important, because whatever you experience, good, bad, or indifferent, you expand. You become more in every moment, and you expand the universe. your guides, angels, light beings, loved ones, whatever you want to call them, go with you, expand. The source expands, everything expands. Doesn't matter what you experience, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. You know, there's this idea that if it's bad, we're doing something bad. But your higher self, or your soul, or the source, whatever you want to call it, it's not that they want anything for you, because they love you anyway. It's looking at you through that innocent aspect. But we, I suppose, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here to remind people of this, because I want people to experience their life through that filter of love, or not filter, but through that space of love instead of that fear, and realize that you don't have to. So many people don't want to bring about change in their life. They know that they need to make changes, but they don't do it until something big happens. An illness happens, a divorce, or lose their job, or something big happens. But I want people to not have to go that far, to get to know themselves, to come back to themselves. And the separation sickness just takes us further and further away from ourselves until things get so big that one day we go, oh, okay, maybe I need to make some changes. And it's also made us separate from nature, separate from animals, and separate from other people and cultures. It's like everything has become separate, but the same life force that flows through us flows through animals, flows through everything on this planet. And in that way, yes, we're all connected. We all have different agendas, because we all have different things we want to experience this life. Plus, we're looking through different filters, depending on, you know, what we decided to experience our energy as this life. So yes, I've gone off again. I'm sorry.
But when people talk about, like, when spiritual teachers talk about illusions, I also often remind people, you know, like you're having a bad dream. It's not real. But does it feel real? The effect, the fear, your sweat, or the sense of, you know, anxiety you get out of it, it's still real. So it's like the Buddha having a dream, and he said all what we live is an illusion and it's a dream. In some way, in a spiritual sense, we understand what it means. In the physical world, of course, we still have our body to live. But I found it's really simple, straightforward. Just think about like a dream. You still get scared, don't you? And a nightmare when you have a nightmare. So, but anyway, like, I know that we can talk about this forever long, because it's so fundamental to our daily life. And, you know, I'm sure you the same, that when you have a client coming to you, whether, like, same for me, whether it's about the inquiring about relationships or about business, about work, it's all about what can I do to get what I want, and how can I forgive these people and go move on, or how can I change this. And sometimes people come to the point where say, I want this result, so I need to minus this or plus this in order to get that. But I've always found that fundamentally the question isn't about what you need to do or not do. It's about how you inhabit the space. Like what you said about how you use the filter to see through the world. It's how you inhabit the space. Are you living in a mind of love, or in mind of God, whatever language people are comfortable with? It's how you live yourself, and what filter do you use. And when you get that right, then it's not so much about what you asked me, that the steps you need to take or not take to get you where you want to be. It's natural for you to be there when you inhabit the space as such. That's, I think we use different words and language, but we talk about very similar things. It's about who you become inside, and therefore you emerge from it. So whether it's about relationship, about business, it's the same. You will get to get what you want, so to speak, or learn the lessons that you need to, but really being yourself. So, I mean, it's funny, like it almost sounds like another example of broken record. People ask for what to do. We say, just inhabit the space differently. And they're like, oh.
But of course, you know, so many people don't like their life, and they're doing whatever they can to escape from the moment.
You cannot divorce yourself.
No, and because you're going to take yourself wherever you go. But there's that whole idea that if I do something, or something comes my way, I'm going to feel better. And so all of this work is learning to feel better right now.
Mm.
You can begin to choose that. But it's not something, if you're feeling down in the dumps, you can't all of a sudden jump up and go, oh, life's wonderful, because the jump is too big and it doesn't feel authentic. It feels fake. And so the best thing you can always do is come back, learn to find a way to just be neutral. And then you can start to create that. So what does neutral mean? It means that there's no charge there anyway. And meditation is the best way to do that. But of course, people go into meditation with the same idea as what you were saying before. What do I have to do? So how do I do this meditation thing? It's like, and okay, so I'm meditating and nothing's happening. Am I meditating right? Now the inner critic's popping back in again. You know, am I doing this right? Oh, is this working? I'm not feeling anything. And so that just means you're not meditating. So maybe we can use another term to just say, just coast along or go neutral. And of course, everyone will go, oh, but I have to do something. And it's like, yeah, but if you do from that place, you're just going to create more out of balance stuff.
Yeah, less is more sometimes the non-doing, it's a doing.
Always that, start from where you are.
Start from where you are.
And it doesn't matter, you know, and I say this to myself probably a few times a day, and every morning, start from where I am. Just because I do the work I do doesn't mean that I know all the answers. And if I knew all the answers, there'd be no point to living either.
Yeah, you'll be enlightened master, disappear in the ether.
And so it is start from where you are and just begin to learn about yourself. And you can do that through many, many different ways. Meditation is a great way. And, you know, cards are a great way too, because the cards are a reflection of what you're feeling in that moment. I don't use cards to say, oh, this is what's going to happen to you in the future. It's like, how can we find a way to make you feel better right now? So you can begin to create the life that you want to create.
Because some people like different language, different tools. It's like, you know, for some people, cards is great. For some people, maybe it's music or whatever that is that can help them. So, but anyway, today,
massage.
Yeah, today has been a really great opportunity to talk with Denise, and I hope that is one of the conversations that matter. I hope what we say may help people who may be in a situation where they need some new thoughts, some insights, or, you know, you may have your own aha moment by just say, yeah, that sounds like it was just talking about me. That usually it's a good one. Or something when people hear us talking and it's something just stick in their head and they don't understand and don't know why, it either make them feel really good or really irritate them or whatever that is, keep that in mind, because that may be something that it's important for you to look into. So, but I want to thank Denise for spending time with me today on today's Conversations That Matter. So we're not live today, but this is a recording. And yeah, like maybe we'll do this another time, because, you know, you talk about cards, and I think some people may be really interested in learning more about how to use oracle cards, not to predict future, but to understand themselves and their life and what the universe is telling them. And, you know, Denise knows a great deal of them, and she's an author of quite a few decks. So maybe we should make another date.
Something I just wanted to say just before we go, and I just wanted to give people a little technique that they can use to come back into balance with themselves. The easiest way, deep breathing is the best way to let go of the stress response and activate the relaxation response. And so a really great tool is breathe in, just stop what you're doing. You can close your eyes, you don't have to, and just breathe in to the count of 4, and then hold for the count of 4. Breathe out for the count of 4, and then rest for the count of 4, and breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, and then rest for 4, and then do it again. Do that 4 times, and that will bring you into a space it will activate the relaxation response, and you will automatically begin to feel better.
Great. I actually done that in my yoga class.
I'm sorry?
I've done that in my yoga class. It's really good to still.
It's in one of my card sets, and I call it the meditation of 4. And if you do it 4 times a day for 4 days, you will shift. That inner critic will begin to shift as well.
Good. Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you for talking with us. And I love that breathing technique. I do use it sometimes. It is really helpful to, everybody can do this 4 kinds of 4, and so no one have excuse of I have no time. I mean, that's really effective, very quick way to help us to go back, bring us back to balance and still the mind. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I always like to remind people that they are loved and that they are loved.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.